Disney has released the third episode of Star Wars The Acolyte, which shows where the tragic journey of Osha and her twin sister all began. And I thought it was pretty bad, actually. Now, I will be spoiling what happens in this episode, so if you don't want to have anything spoiled for you, then I suggest you stop watching this video and go on to watch The Acolyte instead. At any rate, the story in episode 3 is told entirely in flashback, as we finally get to see the fire that caused Osha to believe that her twin sister May had died 16 years ago. And that isn't inherently a bad thing, but the way that the events play out is actually quite baffling. As it turns out, Osha and May belong to a coven of witches, and these particular witches haven't given birth to children in a suspiciously long time, meaning that Osha and May were born under rather mysterious circumstances. And that part of the story is rather intriguing. I would like to know more of that part of the story specifically, especially if it connects to the birth of Anakin Skywalker. However, when 4 Jedi members decide to pay the Coven a visit, Osha declares that she wants to leave her family. She doesn't want to be a witch, she wants to be her own person and maybe even become a Jedi herself. This enrages her twin sister so much that May decides to burn down her entire village in retaliation. And this is where I take issue with the episode, because I don't believe that a young child who seems to love her sister and the rest of her family very much would become so angry at her sister for wanting to make her own choices in life that she would murder the rest of her family as a result. That makes absolutely no sense to me. So I think one of two things is happening here. Either the character motivations in this show are extremely underwritten, or the events portrayed in this episode are not what they appear to be. Yes, May started the fire, but maybe the Jedi attacked the Coven of Witches themselves and used the fire to cover up their deaths. Or maybe the witches tried attacking the Jedi, and the Jedi killed them all in self-defense, once again using the fire as a cover-up. Or maybe the witches ended up killing themselves. After all, there did seem to be some tension rising between the leader and her second in command, so maybe a coup was happening during the fire, and the Jedi had nothing to do with the incident. Either way, I think the real answer will end up being frustrating. Because either May did it, and there's nothing surprising left about the story being told, or May didn't do it, and that revelation will also fail to be surprising. Regardless, the writing just isn't as thoughtful as it probably ought to be. And it doesn't help that the direction doesn't feel so engaging either, or that the acting is still a little wooden, or that the dialogue is still quite silly, or that the characters make one baffling decision after another. So, by the time the episode had finished, I actually had more questions than I did answers, which is rather surprising given that the episode was actively trying to provide us with some answers. But my questions have less to do with the story itself and are more about the storytelling process in general. because conceptually, I do like the idea of this episode. The Jedi come into some conflict with a coven of witches, but since we never see these witches committing any crime, it's unclear as to why the Jedi would be present in the first place. And that uncertainty should have made for a compelling narrative, since we as the audience wouldn't really know who to trust in this conflict, which in turn should have raised the tension in the story being told. The only problem is the storytelling itself is rather messy. So I do have to admit that I am currently disappointed with Leslie Headland's work as the showrunner. But I'm not a hater who thinks that she's an abomination to the Star Wars franchise. I just wish that her work here was a bit better is all. But there are aspects of the episode that I did enjoy. I liked seeing Carrie-Anne Moss again, especially since I thought she was only going to appear in episode 1. I liked seeing more of the Jedi in this episode, especially in moments that challenge how we perceive the Order as a whole. And I liked the mystery surrounding Osha and May's birth, especially since it involves a coven of witches who utilize the Force in ways that we're not used to seeing. I just wish that these elements came together in a more engaging way. So hopefully the next episode will end up being better, but I guess we'll find out how episode 4 of The Acolyte will actually turn out to be once it gets released on Tuesday evening.